Hey guys, so in my last video I made just kind of like a video about setting rules and boundaries in your car as a driver. So the incident that I wanted to talk about regarding that was that there was this guy. So I have my rules posted in the back, because most people, unless it's four people, they're getting in the back. So I had this one guy that came and he wanted to sit in the front, because he said something about asking if he could sit in the front because he had motion sickness. Um, and so to my against my better judgment, I allowed him to sit in the front, and it was just him. Usually, if it's just one person, my rule is that they have to sit in the back. But because of his motion sickness, I allow him to sit in the front. Um, and so as soon as he got in the front, I immediately recognized that uh, this ride was going to be one of um, trying to regain control as the driver, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I'll get people who, um, for whatever reason, they want to control the ride itself. So as far as the music and the conversation, the direction that we're going in, and you know that's fine as far as like having say so as the rider as far as where you go and what direction we're going in. But a lot of times I get riders that are just really aggressive with controlling the climate of my car, if that makes sense. So he got in the car, and the first thing he wanted to do was connect his Bluetooth. And so I had to pull over, um, and try to connect his Bluetooth. It wasn't connecting. So then he was trying to control the settings on my car so that he could connect his Bluetooth. And I told him it wasn't going to work. So so then, you know, that's kind of when the slippery slope kind of started, where I saw, okay, this is going to be like a sort of like a battle for control, because now against my better judgment, I allow him to intercept a boundary that I wasn't comfortable with, which was him sitting in the front. And now he's trying to control the volume of my car, trying to control the Bluetooth settings, to which I had to kindly tell him, you know, if you need to, you know, control something or turn something up or down, just let me know and I'll do it for you. But uh, him being in the front, so it really threw off the groove of my driving. And so this is why it's so important. Forgive me for talking in circles. This is why it's so important to set the boundary in the beginning, because it is so important to be able to be comfortable and safe as the driver, so that you can drive with a clear mind. I was so busy in conversation with him being in the front seat and you know, trying to control the music and asking me all of these different questions, that I was actually distracted while I was driving. And we didn't collide with the vehicle, but we came pretty close. It wasn't like extremely dire, but it was a big lesson for me, because had I set the boundary in the first place for him to sit in the back, um, I wouldn't have been distracted with driving and trying to set a boundary with him while I was driving. It seems like a very small deal, but if you've ever been a driver before, you know that, especially if you're trying to navigate instructions with or without the GPS, when somebody's you know, either like invading like your personal space in the front and asking you questions, it can be very distracting, and you want to have minimal distractions as a driver. So that was the first mistake. I let him sit in the front. I had to set a boundary about controlling the music and the settings, and you know, touching the certain controls in front of um in front of the car, and or on the radio. And then it was just like there was no end to him trying to initiate a conversation. And like I said, this it's really hard to understand unless you've actually been a driver. But it can be very distracting with somebody asking you, things about like, um, your life, where you grew up, what made you move down here, and all of those things. Especially if they're asking you in a very like rapid fire type of way. So then I had to try to control the flow of the conversation just so I could be able to think and focus on how to drive in the midst of like him asking me questions about my background and things like that, while also trying to tell me where to go, which way to go, which lane to get in. And like I said, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but if somebody's asking you, oh, well, where are you from, or what made you move down here, okay, now get over in the middle lane. Oh, okay, so what kind of music do you listen to? Okay, now make a right. It can be, you see what I mean, like so it's yeah, you really have to set boundaries, and I didn't have that on my sheet. But what that lesson taught me was that even if it's not on here, if there's something that a passenger asks you and it rings a bell, like, oh, actually I wouldn't feel comfortable with him sitting in the front since it's just him, because I don't want to be distracted, or I don't want to make an extra stop because it's not on the route, and because you didn't put it in. Like, just whatever your intuition or your gut is telling you, just follow that, because some of these riders, they just they want to control, just like I said, the climate and culture of your car, which if you're the driver, you are in fact in control of this car. You control the conversation, how fast it goes, whether or not you want to talk, what you want to talk about. You control the music, the volume, if you want it loud, if you want it softer. You control even the directions. Now, for safety purposes, I always allow people to go whichever way they want to go, especially if it's a shorter route, because they're paying for it. But even still, there's a certain way to have a flowing conversation to where it's not chaotic and distracting for you as a driver, and it's not unsafe. Because had I collided with the car that when I was distracted, that would have been my fault, because I'm in control of the vehicle. And like I said, it wasn't just like a close call per se, but it made me realize that you have to not be afraid to set boundaries in the beginning, because if you don't, if something happens, like, it's always going to be on you as the driver. And you have to minimize the distractions, including people talking to you. And I don't think we talk about this enough as drivers, like how draining it can be for people to impose conversation, impose an invasion of personal space, to want to sit so close, impose intimacy in such an already small space, and how draining and uncomfortable that can be, and how they can throw you off your groove in your game. So I know that may be a little confusing, but I would encourage you, like, if you have a car or have all of the requirements and you're not a driver, like, just try it sometimes, just to see what I'm talking about as far as like controlling the climate and culture of your car. Because at the end of the day, again, it's all about like you being comfortable, you being safe. Like, you want everybody to be safe, but if the driver is not feeling safe and the driver is the one controlling the car, that's not good for anybody. So that was yet another lesson. I know I did my last video about rules, but there are some rules that you're going to think about that's not going to be written on here. and you just kind of have to decide in that moment, because that's what happened to me. I was caught off guard by him asking if he could sit in the front because he gets motion sickness from sitting in the back. And, you know, had I been in my right mind, I would have said, well, either you can sit in the back or you can just get another ride. And it's just as simple. It's not it's not me being rude. It's not anything of that nature. It's just either we fit as rider and passenger, or driver and passenger, or we don't, and you can find a ride with someone else, but I don't feel comfortable with you sitting in the front. And that's what should have happened, instead of me constantly having to set these boundaries. Okay, no, like, we can keep the music at this volume. I don't want it to get too loud, or no, please don't turn the knobs, I'll do that. Or trying to control all of the influx of questions while I'm trying to navigate traffic. Like, all of that could have been nipped in the bud if I would have just set my first boundary, which would have been to have him sit in the back, as opposed to me now having to fight for control over my own vehicle. And, like, it sounds really dramatic, but when you have a passenger on top of passenger on top of passenger, the anxiety can really build up, along with trying to navigate with the other cars, with the emergency vehicles that come out of nowhere. It's a lot. It's a lot. And like I said in the last video, and like I'll keep saying, we deserve a lot more credit as drivers for the things that we endure to get people to where they are safely. We're therapists for people that get in our car and talk about whatever they're going through. We're almost babysitters sometimes, like when people get in their car with kids, and it's just it's so many different, like, hats that we put on in the small amount of time that we are transporting people. And I think people really undervalue that. And so this is just one of my many conversations about appreciating yourself as a driver, and starting with rules and boundaries, and not being afraid or ashamed to put them there, or just to say them. You're not being rude. You're not, if somebody is offended, they can always get a ride from someone else. And it's just that simple. But we have to start doing this so that people can, in fact, have more respect for drivers and for what we do. So again, like I always say, any suggestions, please feel free to comment. I know the lighting is bad in this video, but I had to make these videos really quick because it's been a long time since I posted, maybe a couple weeks. And I wanted to get that out there before I forgot about it. And so this, while it's fresh on my mind, and because it just happened today, I wanted to go ahead and talk about those small things but big things that can really add up. So peace and blessings, y'all. I will make some other videos later, but y'all have a good one.